This video is presented by Western and Southern Financial Group, a game plan for your financial future. Every great team starts with a strong foundation, and your future should too. With life insurance built like a championship roster, Western and Southern helps protect what matters most, so you can focus on winning today while planning for tomorrow. Whether you're just starting your journey, building your dynasty, or ready to retire like a champion, Western and Southern has the right play for your life stage. Visit westernsouthern.com to get your free life insurance quote today. Western and Southern, built to win. Next up, we got the Peach Bowl between Indiana and Oregon, a rematch in the college football playoff semifinals on Friday night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN. Both teams were favored to win their quarterfinal games, and unlike Miami and Ole Miss, both favorites won those games as well in convincing fashion as well, because Alabama got dominated by Indiana in the Rose Bowl, and the Ducks shut out Texas Tech in the Orange Bowl as well. Again, this is a rematch from Week 7, back when Indiana went on the road to Eugene and beat Oregon by a 30-20 final score. Indiana trying to advance to its first national championship game in program history. Oregon trying to make it back to the national title game for the first time since 2014.
Do you think there's some draft scouts that are going to be watching this game?
Man.
Especially out there in Las Vegas and New York all of a sudden. My New York Jets are probably going to be they probably got this game on the big screen for sure. But, oh, no, I mean, you couldn't ask for much better. It was a really good first game between these two teams in Eugene back in Week 7. Indiana getting that win as they've won every game this season and coming off both. Actually, I'll give them both credit. What dominant outings these two teams both just played in the quarterfinal. Obviously, Oregon, it was a little bit ugly because you got to deal with Texas Tech's defense, but 23-0 in that game. And then, boy, what Indiana did to Alabama in the Rose Bowl. That sure makes you believe they're the best team in the country and obviously well-deserving of that top ranking. But this is going to be fun because you've always got the rematch factor, right? When you got to play a really good team a second time, what is it going to look like? What are the adjustments? And if you're Indiana, to me, a big question and a lot of facets is, can you physically dominate this team? Because this is the one team all year that physically dominated Oregon. Can you do it a second time, or does Oregon have the adjustments? And is Dante Moore going to learn from some of his mistakes in the first game?
Absolutely. All right, let's start off with the Indiana offense in this game. Dalton, you actually have the run game against Oregon's run defense. What should we know about that side of the ball?
Yeah, interesting enough, when I went back and watched this the first time around, and look, Indiana's run game is not all that complicated. It's a lot of inside zone. It's a lot of duo. It's a lot of just, let's line up and execute, and our offensive line is better than it was last year. Hell, they were the MVP, that unit, Pat Coogan and those guys up front. They were the MVP of the Rose Bowl against Alabama for the way they ran the football last week. But you rewind it to Week 7, 59.5 rushing grade for Indiana in that game against Oregon, their lowest of the season, just 3.3 yards per carry, just 1 yard before contact per carry, 4 missed tackles forced, and not a single run of at least 15 yards in that game. Dan Lanning and this defense, they do such a great job of preventing explosive runs. It's one of the best parts of their defense. And to me, when I watched it, it was really the guys in the middle of their defense, the two big defensive tackles, Bear Alexander and Amari Washington, really won the battle for the most part in the run game in that first one. And then you got that group of linebackers, Bryce Betcher, Jerry Mixon, Devin Jackson, did a great job of cleaning things up behind those guys. So I really am curious to see if Indiana can run the ball between the tackles as well as they did against Alabama. They would dominate this game if they do that again, and better than they did last time against Oregon. I think really the two defensive tackles, kind of like I talked about in the Ole Miss game with their defense against Miami's offense, I think Amari Washington and Bear Alexander play a big part in occupying those double teams and occupying all those gaps up front to free up the linebackers, to free up the safeties on the back end. Aaron Flowers, Dylan Thieneman tackling so well in the run game too. That's a big key to me. Can they work around Alexander and Washington, or is a lot of the pressure going to be on Mendoza in the passing game in third and long situations?
Yeah, so I have the Indiana passing game in this one, Fernando Mendoza and the Hoosiers, and I'm kind of looking at him and also the Indiana offensive line in this game. Can they hold up a little bit more than they did in their last outing against Oregon? Because even though Indiana won that game, it wasn't really the best outing from Fernando Mendoza out there. He only had a 49.4 passing grade in the win over Oregon with 0 big-time throws and 1 turnover-worthy play, and that 1 turnover-worthy play ended up being a pick six for Oregon as well. It was the second worst passing grade of the year. And you can see that bottom line right there. Indiana, only a 48.3 pass blocking grade for the Hoosiers in that one too, which was, again, their second worst of the season, ahead of only, I believe, the Penn State game for them. And Oregon in that game dialed up a lot of blitzes. They blitzed Fernando Mendoza over 41% of the time in that game. So I think Fernando Mendoza against pressure and against blitzes is going to be really interesting to watch in this one, because even though he wasn't very good against Oregon, he's actually been great against pressure and against blitzes this year. In fact, his 71.4 passing grade against pressure is the best among all Power 4 quarterbacks this year. He has an 86 passing grade when blitzed this year. That's 8th in the entire country. So you got a red-hot Mendoza right now who's coming off back-to-back career-high performances in terms of PFF grade against Ohio State, and then he broke his career high against Alabama in the Rose Bowl. So he is red-hot right now, going up against a great Oregon pass rush and a great Oregon secondary. But again, Mendoza had a sub-50 passing grade back in that Week 7 win over Oregon. It wasn't really his best outing. I'm looking at, okay, can he be better in this one against the blitzes? Because I feel like Dan Lanning and Tosh Lupoi are going to drop a lot of blitzes, considering how well it worked out in that first game.
Yeah, and I'll certainly get into how Dante Moore will handle pressure in just a minute, because that's really the key to the game for both quarterbacks. But you mentioned it, and so this is a great example of so often, people go, well, who's got the best pass rush? And the next question will be, well, who's got the most sacks, of course? Well, Mendoza was only sacked once in that game, but under pressure 38% of the time, which is a relatively high amount. And that pick six caught by none other than Brandon Finney, the great true freshman corner, right? You're talking about the pressure getting to him a little bit and the different looks on defense getting to him a little bit. And it's really, again, I'll go over it in a second. It's the same way with Dante Moore. Which of these quarterbacks is going to handle dynamic front sevens, right? Especially in those third and long situations. It's a great point you make about Mendoza, and whoever makes those adjustments is probably going to win this game.
So let's talk about Dante Moore, the other candidate to potentially be QB1 in the NFL draft other than Fernando Mendoza. What should we know? Because it was honestly, Dalton, it was probably his worst game of the season against Indiana. What should we know about him in this matchup?
It absolutely was. And Moore was also one who really cracked under the pressure that Indiana was sending at him. And Indiana, look, they make college quarterbacks do doctorate level things. Brian Haynes, Indiana's defensive coordinator, deserves a lot of credit for all of the creative pressures. Not only are they obviously really good, right? Guys like Mikael Kamara up front, he got 7 pressures in that first game, but they really know how to confuse quarterbacks, how to rotate coverages, how to send simulated pressures where, a quarterback thinks it's coming from one way and it's actually the blitz is coming from another, and then the whole coverage is rotating. They mess with your eyes as much as any defense in college football. And Dante Moore, this was the one game in Week 7 where we really saw him throwing off his back foot, not sure of himself, right? Because when he's throwing confidently, boy, he can throw with anybody, right? That's why he might be the number 1 pick in the draft. But season low, 46.6 passing grade in that first game, 6 sacks, and look at that. You just mentioned 38% pressure rate for Mendoza. How about almost 48 for Dante Moore? That's almost impossible to work with. And that last number, that's something I'm going to go over in a separate film breakdown as well. 1 deep completion for Dante Moore. Dante Moore is the highest graded deep passer. That's 20-plus yard targets in the country, a 98.8 passing grade on deep targets. But the games where Oregon's offense has struggled are the ones where you have teams that play a lot of zone coverage and they don't allow free access to those deep shots. Indiana plays more zone coverage than any team in the country. And when you look at some of those games where Oregon stayed within reach and possibly could have lost or did lose this game, right? This one. The Iowa game, right? They prevent explosives as much as anybody. The Penn State game, you guys did a good job of holding down the deep ball. Now, he earned it, but you made him work for it, that's for sure. And even last week against Texas Tech, I think he only had 1 deep completion in that game as well, and Texas Tech sat back and made him work for it while the pass rush was winning. This is a formula, if there is any, to beating Dante Moore. You have to make him work for it. Are you going to shut him out? No, you're not. He's too good for that. But can Oregon create more deep shots down the field? Or Can Dante Moore make the adjustment this time to working underneath, working to the chains, and manufacturing offense? It was better last week against Texas Tech, and that's a monster of a defense to deal with, but this is another one, and I think a similar strategy is going to need to be deployed here as far as manufacturing first downs, because Indiana, I believe they've only given up 13 deep completions all season, and 3 of them were to Ohio State. So it's going to be tough to hit those home run shots. Can he succeed without them?
Yeah, and that was one of the few defenses that could really get home consistently on Dante Moore, considering Oregon right now has the second best pass blocking grade in college football right now. And yeah, Dante Moore, who has been so good this year, he and that Oregon offense can only put up really 13 points against Indiana in that first game. Remember, 7 of those points came off a pick 6 for Oregon, so they scored 20 points total, really only 13 came from the offense. I have the run game for Oregon in this one too against Indiana's run defense, which really is strength on strength, right? Because Oregon's run game has been one of the best in college football this year. Indiana's run defense has been one of the best in college football this year. And in the first matchup, Indiana had success against Oregon. But on the season, Oregon generates .163 EPA per run, second in the Power 4. 93.8 rushing grade is tied for the best in the Power 4 as well. It's got a great offensive line and 3 really, really good running backs to rely on in Noah Whittington, Jordan Davison, and De'Aaron Harrell Jr. The Ducks, though, against Indiana, they failed to get much going. Negative .139 EPA per run, their 3rd worst game of the year. Only 116 rushing yards. It was the only game all season where Oregon failed to have a rushing touchdown, and only 3 broken tackles by Oregon in this game on about 24 carries. And honestly, the offensive line did a decent job overall. It generated about 2 yards before contact per attempt. The running backs, Indiana was not missing any tackles out there, honestly. So Indiana did a great job of fitting up the run and not missing any tackles either. So I'm really looking at the 3 running backs in this game, in Whittington, in Davison, and in Hill. Can they break more tackles against what has been one of the best tackling teams in the country, one of the best run defending teams in the country, a very sound run defense overall. Oregon, which has had an elite run game all year, they have got to be better and have got to support Dante Moore more than they did back in Week 7.
No, absolutely. 2 things you just mentioned there. They're sound. There is not a team. They're not just very good at it. I don't believe there is a team better in college football at run fits and being where they're supposed to be than Indiana. And I think a lot of that starts with just 3 outstanding linebackers, Aiden Fisher, Isaiah Jones, Elijah Hardy. They are always where they need to be. So when you talk about Oregon and a very good Oregon offensive line being where they need to be, that means they need to get to the second level. The first blocking at the first level is cool, right? We talk about it all the time. Good offensive lines block at the first level. Great offensive lines block at the second level. You've got those 3 linebackers. And then I'll tell you another guy who's a big impact guy, the safety/nickel, Devin Boykin. He's actually their highest graded run defender. He was one of their best players on the field last week against Alabama. This is somebody who really impacts the game at the second level. How about a 93.4 run defense grade for Devin Boykin, the safety on the season? That second level is where this game is going to be won. Oregon needs more explosive runs as well if they're going to win this game, and they have to prove that they're more physical than last time, because again, I think the theme of the game last time was both quarterbacks struggling under pressure a bit, but really Indiana was the more physical team for 60 minutes. Oregon has to make up that gap, and they have to make it up in the run game.
All right, Dalton, ultimately, in a rematch from Week 7, will Indiana once again take down Oregon and advance to the national championship game, or will Oregon get revenge on the Hoosiers and advance to their first national title game in about 11 years?
It is such a fascinating game because of the possibility for adjustments made from the first one, right? What did both coaching staffs learn? What did both quarterbacks learn? What did both defenses learn? That even though both defenses played a pretty good game, how can they be even better than last time, right? And I think you've got this dynamic. And also, like we saw last time, Mendoza with the pick 6, Moore threw 2 interceptions. Can either defense force the other elite quarterback, maybe the 2 best quarterbacks in the country, can they force them into another backbreaking mistake, right? You almost had it. We almost had the backbreaker with that Finney pick 6, and then Indiana came down and scored again, right? But what is going to happen there, and which quarterback can see the field better against 2 great defenses? At the end of the day, I do think Indiana is the best team in the country. I think they're the better team in this game. I think they get it done again. It's very hard to beat a team twice. But the one thing I still question for Oregon, and this almost goes back to the beginning of the year, I need somebody in their receiving core to really step up and have like a huge game, right? Oregon this year, they only have 2 games from any individual all year where someone had 100 receiving yards. And both of those were Malik Benson in each of their last 2 games, actually, against Washington and James. Actually, I shouldn't say the last 2 games, not Texas Tech, but against Washington and James Madison. Those are the only 2 100-yard receiving days that Oregon's had the entire season. Is it Benson? Is it DeCorian Moore? Is it Kenyon Sadiq? I need somebody on this.
Maybe Evan Stewart.
Maybe it's Evan Stewart if he's healthy enough to go. I kind of need somebody to step up for Oregon and go for $120 in this game if they're going to win. I'm not sure it's going to happen, especially with as sound as Indiana is in coverage. I'm a little worried about the receiving core. I like Indiana's a little better with Surratt and Cooper and Becker on the outside. Give me the Hoosiers 31-24.
I have Indiana winning as well. I think it's going to be a coin flip. I have it 27-24. I was so impressed by how Indiana found a way to win that last game in Week 7. And I think, like you said, Dalton, Indiana right now is playing like the best team in college football right now. So I'm going to take Fernando Mendoza. I'm going to take the Hoosiers to take down the Ducks once again in the college football playoff. And Indiana moves one step away from the program's first ever national championship. So my predicted national title game is Indiana against Miami. Dalton's is Indiana against Ole Miss. Let us know in the comments below what you think the national championship game will be.
Everyone's got takes. Numbers have truth. And the truth is, most people are betting with emotion. Sportsbooks feed on it. TikTok gurus sell it. The hype machine runs on it. That's how you lose. PFF is different. You're betting with winning data. The same data trusted by all 32 NFL teams and the sharpest minds in the game. PFF betting tools take every prop, every matchup, every angle, and run them through our custom models. Built on the best football data in the world. What comes back is your edge. Simple, sharp, and built to win. Want to go deeper? PFF puts a pro-level analytics department in your hands, giving you the same insights teams use to find every advantage. Build your game plan with matchup analysis. Project every snap, every matchup, and every edge before kickoff. Because the smartest plays start long before Sunday. Hit rates show how a player performs against their prop and against defenses built the same way. It's the data that gives you real confidence in every pick. Next, Key Insights translates PFF data into the story behind every matchup, giving you the why that powers your bets. From coverage schemes to defensive looks, it's the context that turns raw numbers into winning decisions. When you're ready to take action, filter through every prop on the market and focus on the opportunities that matter, by game, matchup, or value. Then, shop for the best available line in your area and tap your book of choice to place the bet instantly. Everyone's got takes, but now you've got truth. Bet with data, win with PFF.